Making money like a mint, laying in my ice like shrimp. Mint condition that I'm in, coming with the freshness.
This week we'll be working on the subfloor in the van, and I will be doing a method that isn't anything brand new. It's something that I've seen other people do before, but basically I will be taking 1x2s, creating like a base frame or a grid, filling the voids with 3/4 inch Polyiso, that's a rigid foam board insulation, and then I will be covering the entire thing with a 3/4 inch piece of plywood as my subfloor. Now I chose this method for two very specific reasons. First being that I didn't want to drill any new holes into my floor. You certainly can if you want to. I didn't want to do that. So I will be using heavy duty construction adhesive to place the 1x2s on the floor, and then I will be using the 3M adhesive spray to put the Polyiso onto the floor. I will also be taking advantage of the existing tie-down threads that are in the back of the van. So I'll be able to take a long bolt and go through my top plywood, through the 1x2 or the insulation, down into the tie-down threads, and I should have a really secure subfloor. The second reason why I chose this method specifically is because Polyiso can handle moisture fairly well, and I have a concern about moisture given that I live by the ocean, and these ProMasters do tend to leak. So after weeks of digging around and doing research, this method felt the best for my needs. I'm not here to tell you what the best insulation to use is in your van. I'm not here to tell you which way you should install a subfloor. This is just what works best for Tiffany and I. Now we are definitely vertically challenged. I'm 5'10", Tiffany is a little shorter than me. So losing that 1.5 inches isn't a big deal for us. Now, if you guys are a little taller, you could definitely go with a thinner material and maybe gain 1 inch back, but for us, this is okay. Now, before we can actually start installing any type of subfloor, I need to get rattle trap on the wheel wells, and then we'll go from there. So let's get to it. Phew. Alright, so we have rattle trap on one of the wheel wells, and now I'm going to finish off this other side. It's all cleaned up, and now we're going to attempt to stick it on there. Nice and even. Probably not. Alright, so all the rattle trap is on the wheel wells, so I started to draw what the frame or grid is going to look like, and these are definitely the drawings. I have a madman, I have a bunch here. So I started out initially with less 1x2s just to see how it looked, and then quickly moved on to some different iterations, and I think this is what I'm going to go with. Now, I kind of worked around a few different things, the first being that I know I'm going to have my sheets of plywood running the wide way, if that makes sense. So I'm definitely going to have two seams, one at 4 feet and then one at 8 feet. So I wanted to have some solid pieces there. I also know that there are these long running ribs, you could call them, that I wanted to take advantage of. So the pieces of 1x2 will sit really nicely on those specific ribs. So I ran 3 long ones to the top, or from the top down to my seam at 4 feet. So I think this is going to work out. This is what I'm going to go with. So I like doing all of this stuff on paper first because now I have all of my pieces of wood labeled. So when I do my measurements, it's easy to transfer it back and forth from my paper to my wood. And then I know exactly where every piece is supposed to go in the van. And then same goes for my Polyiso. So I have it like labeled P14, for example. I know that P14 is supposed to be a certain dimension and that it's going to be in this specific spot in the van. So this organization really helps me kind of stay sane when there's just like a lot of things going on in this one project. So hopefully that helps. And yeah, let's get started cutting the 1x2s. Alright, so I just got the 1x2s all cut out and fit into the van. It looks pretty much just like my drawing and it fits really nice, so I'm super stoked with how it turned out. One thing, along the edges of the van, like by the wall and by the door here, it drops down just a little bit, so I had to stick like a 1/4 inch piece of wood underneath just to get all of my 1x2s pretty much level so that when I drop in my Polyiso, I'll have one pretty much even surface. So now we can start cutting the foam board insulation. Again, I'm using 3/4 inch Polyiso. So we have all the easy pieces cut. Now all I have to do is try to fill in these random pieces that aren't totally square. And then I'll be done with the insulation and we can get on to cutting templates for the subfloor. Phew. So I ended up using a jigsaw to cut out the Polyiso. I think you could get cleaner cuts if you used a nice utility knife, but the jigsaw worked out great for me and it was nice and quick. I actually had a lot of trouble finding 3/4 inch Polyiso in my area, so I quickly just wanted to bring this up. I ended up going to J&B Materials, and they have several locations in the Southern California area, but they were able to special order me 3 pieces, where everyone else, if I wanted to special order anything, it was like 1,000 or whatever, which clearly I didn't need. So yeah, if you need something random that you can't find at the big box stores, check out J&B Materials. They were super helpful. Now I am going to start painting all of my 1x2s with a mold mildew primer, since it will be attached directly to the van metal. And after that we can start creating templates for the wheel wells. this brings us to the end of this part of the subfloor process. If you have any questions about anything in this video, just leave me a comment below. Again, I will be posting videos throughout my van build, so if you're interested, please subscribe below. And in the next video, we'll start finishing the subfloor and then move on. So stay tuned.